Hi there, I'm Dave Webster. I'm pastor at Arbroath Mission, and it's great to have this opportunity to speak with you. Hope you're doing okay with everything that's going on in the world at the moment. And what I thought I'd just crack on with and start with this morning is just thinking about how many famous things have been said by many, well, in some cases famous people. Sometimes we can't remember the people who've said these things. But for instance, Winston Churchill said, you know, we will fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them on the landing grounds, we'll fight them in the hills, we will never surrender, that kind of thing. Barack Obama said, yes, we can, whatever that was meant to mean. The Beatles said, all you need is love. Margaret Thatcher said, the lady is not for turning. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. And many other people said many other things. Shakespeare said, to be or not to be, that is the question. And so there's all these things that people have said that maybe you know these or other sort of famous quotes that people have said, but there's only some of them that are actually useful and relevant to our lives. And some of the sort of famous wise words that we think of were not said by famous people. For instance, you can't burn the candle at both ends. I don't think that's attributed to anyone in particular. That goes back several hundred years. That kind of wise phrase. There's also the early bird catches the worm. Wise piece of advice for getting up early, getting on with things. I think that was William Camden said that many years ago. And more recently, though, someone else said something. I think it was Jeremy Paxman said, "The early bird may catch the worm, but it's the second mouse that catches the cheese." Only came across that this week and thought, oh yeah, that's interesting too. So there's all these wise little sayings and words. Some of them are relevant. You get famous words that people have said, but actually there's these little sayings that are actually maybe more useful and more relevant to us in applying to our lives and having some benefit to us. And what I was thinking was, with everything that's going on at the moment, then maybe there's some benefit in just thinking, well, what wise words are there that we could just apply directly to our situation as we find it? And I thought, well, do you know what? There's probably no better place to go to for wise words to relate to your situation than to go to the Bible and to go to the words of Jesus. Now, there are many, excuse me, just got an itchy eye here. There are many wise words that have been said by Jesus that you might not actually attribute to Jesus or be aware of, that these are originally words of Jesus, at least, you know, until you think about it a little bit. But for instance, here are some words of Jesus. Turn the other cheek. Did you know that it was Jesus that said that first? Love your enemies. Also Jesus who said that first. Take the log out of your own eye first before you point out the speck in someone else's eye. That was Jesus too. Don't store up treasures on earth. Store up treasures in heaven. Jesus said that. And let tomorrow worry about itself. That also comes from Jesus originally as well. So there's many wise words that come from the mouth of Jesus, and many wise words in the Bible more generally as well. But what I thought might be useful and particularly relevant to us for today is to look at some wise words of Jesus that you find in Mark's Gospel, chapter 3, and from verse 24 and 25. So I'm just going to read that out very quickly, just a couple of verses there. Okay, so it says there, Jesus says these words: "If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand." Okay? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. So these are wise words of Jesus. And I think that they are of relevance to us and really applicable on a number of different levels. So just want to unpack that for us a little bit. First of all, these are words speaking obviously about unity and disunity, and if you apply that first of all to ourselves on a national level at the moment, saying that a divided house and a divided kingdom, more particularly if we're talking about us as a country, as a nation, a divided kingdom cannot stand. Now, if you think about the things that we've been asked to follow through in terms of instructions on social distancing, and just the whole everything to do with the lockdown, then if we're going to be a united kingdom that is going to stand, then we need to be following some of these things that we are told, and in order to flatten the curve, so the phrase goes, and not overburden the NHS and care workers, and you know, the resources can get to the right places at the right times, and we just don't let this infection spread too quickly. But however, on the contrast to that, if even some people, not all people, but if a certain proportion of people are just going to sort of disregard these instructions that we've been given from the government for the benefit of the nation, then actually that is going to be detrimental, not just to them in terms of they might get an infection, or they might get this virus passed on to them, but they also might pass it on to others, and also the wider country, the wider nation may be affected negatively by the overstretch that there would be by the greater spread of infection. So you can think about that, and how actually being united as a kingdom is of benefit to us all. Whereas if there's disunity, if there's division, and some people saying, yeah, let's follow this rule, let's follow these instructions, and other people saying, we're just going to do our own thing, we're not going to listen to this, then you know, that actually affects not just those individuals, but affects the whole edifice, the whole kingdom there. So you can, I think of Jesus' words on that level. Of course, you can go up from nationally to internationally and say, well, if we have a united response to everything that's going on in the world around us, we've gone from something that was termed as an epidemic to something that's been termed as a pandemic. It's affecting the whole of the globe, the whole of the world. Then it seems beneficial to have a whole world, a pan world response to what's going on. So that can be in a number of ways, by people sort of agreeing a strategy of how to stop the spread right across the world, by agreeing between nations how we're going to go about things, by trying to apportion resources, medical supplies, and to the most affected areas at the right time, to work together, share medical data and knowledge, so we understand how this virus is working and how we can combat it, and learn from places where this has been already, and where, you know, also as a world we can put our brains together and put the sort of all the people who would be able to come up with vaccines, just get them to share information, so that we can benefit as a whole from this. So you can see how having a unified response altogether is actually of benefit, not just for sort of a kingdom, for a country, but actually for the world as a whole. And of course, the converse to that is that if there is disunity, if there is division amongst the world, and in terms of if there's disagreement about the responses that we should make in this climate, in this situation, then ultimately that is going to lead to more people dying. You know, not necessarily just in one place or in another place, but in many different places. The whole is affected because of the division amongst its parts. So you can take Jesus' words as just words of wisdom to apply on a national level, even on an international level as well. And if I just jump into the Bible for a moment, Nehemiah chapter 3, there's a lovely story there. I love the image that conjures up for me, the story there in Nehemiah chapter 3, because the situation that you find there, if you appreciate the context round about it, is that there were the people of Judah. They'd been defeated, they'd been taken into exile, and many years later they were able to go back to their country, and to the city of Jerusalem in particular. And one of the things that they discovered, and that was the case, was that the city walls had been broken down, the gates had been burned by fire, and the city was in disgrace, and the city was undefended and was vulnerable. And this was the religious and cultural capital. This was, as well as political capital, this was a place of great significance for them. And it was a desperate situation that they were in. But what happened was, under the leadership of a man named Nehemiah, the people got together. They got together and they worked shoulder to shoulder. They adapted themselves to the situation. People didn't say, well, that's not my job, I can't do that, I'm skilled at this. People just saw the what was needed at the time. So people adapted, people worked hard, worked together, and they achieved a lot together. They rebuilt the wall around the city, made it secure, and they did that by being united as a people group there. And I just think, if you could go and read that if you want, Nehemiah chapter 3 from the Bible in the Old Testament. I just love that wee picture of people working together towards a common goal. And so just kind of leave that with you as sort of just background thinking along the same lines of Jesus saying that a kingdom that is divided will not stand. And that's obviously a positive example of the alternative. When people are united together, well, look, there can be a really positive result out of it. But if we go back to Jesus' words and just think, Jesus said, a kingdom that is divided will not stand. He also said, a house that is divided will not stand. So we can maybe think about this on a more personal level, a more kind of, your own household kind of level. A house divided against itself will not be able to stand. Now, I read just this week that the police have said that the crime levels are down significantly in this last month, and obviously that's because of the lockdown. Burglary levels are down. I wonder why that is. Well, it's because everyone is at home, so you can't go and burgle people's houses as easily when people are at home all the time. At the same time, shoplifting levels are down. I wonder why that is. Well, it's because most of the shops are shut. So it's not rocket science. It's not that people have suddenly changed their ways. It's the circumstances around about us. But another thing is that police are also concerned that whilst those are positive trends, a negative trend that they are concerned about is the levels of domestic violence may be projected to increase. And if you think about it, that's because there's a lot of pressures that people are under. There's a lot of stress that people are under, just being confined together at home in this sort of abnormal situation. It is very difficult, and not to use that as an excuse for anything that any crimes that people may commit, but to say that the situation in terms of domestic stress and pressure is exacerbated because of what we're going through at the moment. And just thinking about that and the words of Jesus that a house that is divided will not be able to stand, I think, well, what can we maybe do practically, just thinking about that we can be united and work well together within our own households. And so, for instance, there's practical things we can think of, like, giving each other space, like trying to say, hey, I'm going to take a turn keeping the kids quiet, or if you've got work to do that you're trying to do from home, I'm going to try and make sure you've got the space and time to do that. I'm going to take on doing my share of the household chores. And also, even though you've got the kids at home 24/7, that you're going to try and get some quality time together in amongst it all, everything that's going on. You'll still try and have some quality time as a couple, or whatever your sort of situation is, just as a sort of family group. You're not going to just be trying to go through the motions of everything and get through the practicalities of life, but you're actually going to say, let's just build some quality time in amongst all of this. I think that these things, they're really just little practical things, but I think they're important because if we go back to the wisdom and the words of Jesus, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So on a positive note, we want to do everything we possibly can to be united families, united households, to just combat any negative effects of the situation that we are going through and the stresses that all of that brings. And on contrast to the words of Jesus saying that a divided house cannot stand, in contrast to that, a united house can be far, far greater at dealing with and persevering through and being resilient through the stresses that we are going through. And this is a theme that's shared elsewhere within the Bible. If you go to Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 12, it says there, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And if you go and read from Ecclesiastes 4, there's some other lovely little pictures there that speak about the importance of unity and togetherness, and the benefit of that the strength that can provide. So Jesus said these wise words: a kingdom divided against itself will not be able to stand. A house that's divided against itself will not be able to stand. And we can think about these wise words of Jesus and apply them practically to the situation that we are experiencing in, nationally, internationally, and personally as well within your own household. And maybe you can sort of work that out, within specific to the situation that you are involved in and where you are, your own context. But what I'd also like to do, speaking about context, is I'd also like to just take some time and look at the context of Jesus' words, where he said them, why he said them, and what was going on at the time when he said that a divided kingdom and a divided household will not be able to stand. And the context is that the religious critics of Jesus' time, they were criticising because they were critics. That's what critics do. But Jesus had been driving out demons from people who were affected by that in some way. So whatever that looked like, Jesus was driving out demons from people who were suffering from demon possession. And what they do is they criticize Jesus, they accuse Jesus, and they say he is driving out demons by demonic power. By the prince of demons, he is driving them out. That's by demonic power that Jesus is driving out these demons. But Jesus points out the flaw in their logic, and he says these wise words. Words you can call this a parable, one of the parables of Jesus, when he says, a kingdom divided against itself will not stand. A house divided against itself will not stand. He says, look, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. Because that would be counterproductive, wouldn't it? If I was driving out demons by demonic power, it would just be sort of infighting within the world of demons. It wouldn't make any sense. And Jesus goes on and he points out with a sort of second parable when he says, look, you can only rob a strong man's house. You can go and read this in the following verse in Mark chapter 3, verse 26. Jesus says, you can only rob a strong man's house if you first go into the house and tie up the strong man, and then you can go and rob his house. And what Jesus is saying is, look, the reason that I am able to drive out these demons that are oppressing these people is because I am coming and binding them up with a stronger power. You can't just kind of walk in and rob a strong man. Jesus is saying, look, I'm able to do this because I've dealt with them. There's a stronger power that Jesus has. He's not doing it by a demonic power. He's actually doing it by something stronger. And what is stronger? It's God. It's God's power. Jesus is doing the work that he's doing. He's doing it by God's power. And of course, the critics that he has, they don't want to acknowledge that Jesus is doing this by God's power. And in fact, it's interesting though, that by their criticism of Jesus, they are in fact verifying what he is doing. They're saying that Jesus is casting out demons by demonic power. They apportion that to be the reason behind what Jesus is doing. But by saying that, they're actually, as his critics, they're still verifying the truth of the fact that Jesus has been doing this miraculous activity of casting out demons that are oppressing people. So we find that even Jesus' critics acknowledge and recognize that he is doing something miraculous and amazing and powerful. They're just struggling to come up with the reason, the explanation, how he is able to do that. But that raises for us the question of, wow. Even as critics see and acknowledge what Jesus is doing. So who is this guy? Who is this guy that is able to do this and to exhibit such power. And they're grappling with that and trying to come up with some reason that fits in with, their view of him, that they don't like him, so they'll come up with a negative explanation. But if you watch the video that we put out last week, we find that there is credible evidence to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. And here we find some other evidence, and there's loads of evidence from the life of Jesus that points towards who he is, and through what he did and what he said and how people were affected by it. And here we see evidence, even by Jesus' critics, that he is exhibiting amazing power to drive out demons. And what we find is, if you think about that, and if you read through the rest of the Gospels, you find that the power that Jesus is able to do that by is God's power. It's God's supernatural power working through the person of Jesus that's able to do this. And as we continue to read through the Gospels, you find that Jesus came as a man on a mission. He came to seek and to save the lost. He came to restore people. He came to help the broken and the downcast, the oppressed and the demon-possessed as well. That's why Jesus came. And through what Jesus achieved in Easter week, and that we spoke a little bit about last week, through what Jesus achieved, what he was doing was making possible an invitation to us, an invitation to me, an invitation to you. And it's to go back to this theme of unity that we've been talking about. Jesus' invitation to you and to me is to unite with him. It's to unite with him in his kingdom as part of his household which is the family of God. And Jesus invites us to be united with him in his kingdom, in his household, family of God. And that's an open invitation to you and to me. It's made possible by what he achieved in Easter week. And it's a great invitation. And so what I'd like to do is I'd just like to close off, to sign off by saying a prayer. And it's a prayer for the world, it's a prayer for our country, and it's a prayer for our households and for each one of us. So you might want to join me in it. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for Jesus. I thank you for his words of wisdom that can help us. I pray for our nation, and I pray for our world, that there would be unity in the way that we work together and are able to combat this virus and all the effects of it upon our society and our world. And Lord, I pray for our households. I pray for unity there also, that we would not be divided and at each other's throats. I pray we would think of each other in practical ways and how we can foster a good environment in the stresses that we go through, how we can be united together. But I pray most of all, thinking about the context of Jesus' words and how they demonstrate and point towards who he is, the power he had, and that he is the Son of God who came to seek and save the lost, and to offer us this invitation of being united with him in his kingdom, in his household, the family of God. I pray for everyone who's watching this and listening to this. I pray, Lord, that we would be able to know what it is to be friends with you, to be in your family, and to have your help, not just your wise words, but your friendship and your presence with us, and your peace in our hearts as we contend with everything that we are going through at the moment. And so, Lord, I thank you for your wisdom and your help to us. And I pray, Lord, that you would just be with anyone who's struggling, particularly at this moment. And I pray that we would be able to encourage one another in whatever means we can do in our own households, and through video, through conversation on the phone and everything like that. And so I just pray these things, and I pray for an end to these troubled times as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for listening, guys. If you're part of our church family and you're watching this on a Sunday morning, we'll be going over to our video conference at 12 o'clock on Sunday. If you're not watching this within that sort of time period, or you're just kind of come across it, then I hope it's been of some use and benefit to you. And yeah, God loves you. Hope you're doing okay.